Hey all, Timey here. Let me tell you, one of my favorite things to do when I'm not writing scripts for videos, procrastinating on writing said scripts for videos, or curling up into a ball in my bed while sinking into crippling self-hating doubt because of me continuing to procrastinate on writing said scripts for videos, I like watching fan-made rap battles. For as long as ERB existed, there have been more than enough fanmates to follow that format, and I'm sure you're aware of all the classic fan-made battles that spawned from it. Tobuscus vs PewDiePie, Squidward vs Bart Simpson, Super Mario vs the Electric Chair, you know, all the greats. And what we're about to review today is no exception. While it's a fairly newer release than most well-known fan-made battles, it still garnered more than enough attention to be talked about on that level. This battle being the one and only JonTron vs Scott the Woz, created by the way more lyrically talented than me, Fightmarker. This battle is really cool to talk about because alright, okay, this bit is getting old. Let's move on to why you're actually here. JonTron vs Scott the Woz was released on July 8th of 2023, and as of this video's publishing, is currently Fightmarker's most viewed video on his channel to date. This battle actually has a bit of an interesting history behind it. Back in the year 2020, Fightmarker's original plan was to make this battle as part of that year's Rap Battle Day, specifically for July 6th of that year, and it was extremely different to what we got in the end. It was originally a big royale, featuring other gaming reviewers like Peanut Butter Gamer, Space Hamster, and even Pro Jared as a Pompey-esque punching bag because it was the cool thing to hate on him back then. The audio was completed and posted to SoundCloud on June 1st, but never actually got the video it was planned to have. There was a minuscule preview of it in the outro to Eminem vs Edgar Allan Poe, but the battle itself just kind of stayed in limbo for a couple years, until eventually it officially got scrapped and heavily reworked into the battle it is now. You can still listen to the original SoundCloud audio if you want to get the idea of how it was planned to be, but honestly, without going into too much right away, I think the version we got now is a major upgrade from its original version. I still enjoy the original audio to an extent, but compared to what we ended up getting instead, not to mention how fast the Pro Jared jokes would have gotten old, it was probably for the best that it got remade like this. So, with all that established, how does this battle of these prominently well-known gaming review figures hold up as its own thing? Let's not waste any more time here and find out. This is JonTron vs Scott the Woz by Fightmarker. Roll it! Already we're off to a good start, with the rap part of the logo designed like the JonTron logo, and the battle part looking like Scott's logo. It's generally Fightmarker tradition to have the rap battle logo in each episode be recreated in the styles of how the respective rappers' logos look, and while it's no different here, it's still seriously impressive as to how close it looks to the actual logos. It looks really clean. JonTron! And speaking of looking clean, here we have Fightmarker himself playing JonTron. I gotta hand it to him, this costume for John is pretty much perfect in every visible way. The hairstyle, the goatee beard, the blue shirt with the black jacket, it's unmistakably JonTron, to the point where he looks near identical to the real John. I know John's wardrobe is not the most amazing nor iconic of YouTuber get-ups, but compared to how Fightmarker's original costume for JonTron was supposed to look 3 years ago, this is a massive glow-up. And even looking past that, there's also little touches to this title card that make it look all the more fitting and appealing. John holding the Spider-Man plug-and-play console, this other John doing the bootleg Mowgli Simba dance, and even the text itself having gears in places of the O's in his name. It's these details that already make it apparent a lot of care and attention was put into how this battle presents itself, and it really shows. I have zero complaints, just well done all around. Not sure why John's hanging himself though, took me a while to notice that. Versus Scott the Woz. Oh wow, how'd they find the one white guy that doesn't look like Scott? This looks so cursed. Shut up, he looks fine. Here he's being portrayed by Chow, and while I probably could have gone for someone like Taiga or even Vlad as originally planned, I'd say he looks decently enough like Scott to successfully pull it off. It's probably one of the easiest looks in fan-made rap battle history to pull off, since the costume is literally just a white guy in a blue shirt and glasses. It's like having a Greg Heffley costume. You'd have to actively try to fuck it up. I guess read a seminal illness is stepping up to me. Fightmarker does the voice for John as well, and while it's not a 100% spot-on impression, it's fitting enough to where I can let it slide. I think a voice impression doesn't have to be totally accurate as long as you've at least got the inflections down. So yeah, I'm fine with how John sounds here. I guess read a seminal illness is stepping up to me. She'll treat this shit like Dangross, just fucking leaves. Oh, alright then, I guess we're just gonna put out that elephant in the room immediately. I guess it would have had to have been brought up eventually, so yeah, why not as soon as possible? Also, this is a small thing, but I love the mini details put into this one YouTube page, both as just one-off jokes and a couple being callbacks to past Fightmarker battles. It's blink and you'll miss it, but definitely worth pausing for.
See, my name is JonTron. Ain't no way I'm done. Your mother's like, I ain't feel a bitch got 88 and 1.
Yo mama joke, so fucking funny.
Shut up. Anyways, the way this part in particular is edited reminds me of something I want to bring up. While I do really like how dynamic Fightmarker's editing can get, both in this battle and tons of others he's done, there are also times when I feel the constant movement isn't really all that needed. Like this part, for example. John's just standing in one place, but the camera rocks back and forth so much you'd think it was being filmed on a boat at sea. Yeah, it does give motion, but not really in a way that feels like it was needed for the video. It just feels a bit much. But yeah, so far I don't really have much to say on the lyrics. They have pretty solid jabs so far, with good references to both rappers and—
Now show. Oh, fuck.
Wait, what the hell?
Yeah, take that, you Twitter using fuck. What, you want some of this too?
Sure.
Well, alright, asshole, you want a war? Let's fucking do it then.
I mean, I guess that explains why John stopped uploading for a bit. So yeah, we can't really get through a video talking about JonTron without talking about that elephant in the room I mentioned earlier. You probably already know what I'm talking about, but long story short, back in 2017, John himself was in an interview with live streamer Destiny regarding John's political views on immigration, where John proceeded to say some not great things. I won't go into detail about it here so I don't take up too much time talking about it, especially when there are numerous other videos by people far more qualified than me talking about it in greater detail. But fact of the matter is, this dealt a massive blow to John's public reputation. It didn't cancel him completely, he still has a decent career online and is still making videos to this day with at least 1 million views per upload, but enough of the damage was done to where most people no longer think of him as highly as he used to be. This is the main reason that this gag exists in the battle. I actually had to ask Fightmarker directly about it to confirm it. As for how I feel about the gag in the battle itself, I think it overall works. It's not like Poppy or Bill Cosby in ERB, where the rapper just comes in and says barely anything before getting KO'd to go to the next opponent. This is one where it actually feels somewhat believable as a main rapper, and it takes more time to let them establish their presence in the battle before getting kicked off. Because, like him or not, John was majorly successful in YouTube back in the day and was one of the most influential reviewers on the platform next to maybe Nostalgia Critic. It would be silly to deny or ignore it. That's part of why I appreciate the amount of detail that went into JonTron's part in the battle. While it's short, it still has more than enough callbacks to John's past work to establish John as an actual person and acknowledge his presence in YouTube history instead of just jumping straight into the controversy. If they hadn't gone to the level they did and just had him say a couple lines before immediately having AVGN replace him, again, like Bill Cosby and ERB, the joke would not have worked nearly as well. But honestly, this gag would have still worked even without the controversy in mind. And that's for the simple fact that John isn't a game reviewer anymore. He certainly used to be, and it's what some of his most popular videos have centered around being, but John himself has long since mainly shifted away from video game content. Nowadays he mainly covers whatever shit he wants to, mostly things like weird TV shows or random products off of Amazon. His video game content is a thing of the past, but it was still a major part of his career, so I think this was a clever way of approaching that, especially given that John's replacement in the battle is the angry video game nerd, a video game reviewer that not only still actively makes game reviews to this day, unlike John, but whose online reviewing career is much older than John, and is just as, if not way more well-known and influential than John ever was. It gets an obvious joke out of the way while having the battle up itself, and it makes said obvious joke work. This was probably the best way of approaching the original matchup while updating it for modern times, and I have to give Fightmarker massive props for it. Wow, I had a lot more to say on that part than I initially thought I would. I need something to set the tone back down. John somehow still keeps talking through the tape in his mouth, and the effect of the brick hitting him comes about a second too early before he's done talking. Worst battle ever, epic fail.
Well, alright, asshole, you want a war? Let's fucking do it then. So Metacritic scat, you know I'm up to use my pen.
So here we've got Zossum doing the video for AVGN, and in keeping up with the weird trend of him seemingly blending imperfectly with whatever YouTuber role he's given, he plays his role here masterfully. Not only does he look the part with being the right build and having the outfit down to a T, but his acting for the nerd makes it clear he's watched a lot of the real AVGN's videos. From the facial expressions he does, to his actions throughout the battle, to even some of the things he does in the background, I can't help but think of the nerd when watching Zossum's performance, and that is a huge credit. Likewise, we have Matthew Thomas, aka Super Things on Cups, doing the voiceover for AVGN. While I wouldn't say he's super accurate to how James Rolfe sounds, I will say he does do a pretty alright job throughout. He's definitely not bad in the role and fits just fine with Zossum's performance. Again, like how I said with John's voice earlier, an impression doesn't have to be super accurate as long as you've got the general inflections down. And yeah, Matthew does exactly that. It's definitely more authentic sounding than how the real AVGN sounds these days.
Oh boy, it's a dating game with a horse with a human head that talks.
God, what happened to you?
All your shit hit or misses like you're built for the NES. Lovely was so shitboard James killed though his fucking friend.
The lyrics mention Scott the Waz's Monopoly game, which by the way I'm only now learning the existence of, yet the video is clearly showing him holding a game of Clue instead. You had one job, Board James.
My hair was fed this news as content that your dickless fans watch they run and have Freddy Krueger fucking give them a hand job.
Now that's an AVGN level insult. This line, along with the over-the-top way it's acted here, definitely sells it as something I can imagine the real nerd would say. Characterization's impressing me so far.
He's colorblind, he probably let JonTron say the N-word.
Definitely a funny punchline for how out of pocket it is, but a part of me also questions if this bit was even all that necessary. I mean, not that John doesn't deserve to get bashed for it, but we kinda already made a big spectacle with addressing his controversies and kicking him out of the battle, and it was done really well. So continuing to bash him after the fact when the battle's now focusing on AVGN just feels a tad redundant. It doesn't really need to be dragged on like this. Oh well, at least we have John doing the Peter Griffin death pose to accompany it, so that's pretty epic. Here's a green screen.
Circles like this shit Superman 64. Ask my buddy Mike. I've dealt with giant dicks before.
Well, if Fightmarker's explanation is anything to go off of, then that line is clever with using that reference to casually diss Scott. But this line also counts as James dissing Mike Matei. And, like, I get it, nobody likes Mike Matei, but it's still weird to hear this come out of James's mouth here. Does it count as a self-diss if it's about someone else from his own team? Also, the visual of the nerd next to the measuring tape making the nerd look like he's 10 inches tall is incredibly hilarious. Also blurry footage.
Hey y'all, Scott here. I was just learning how to rhyme because I was supposed to battle JonTron, just to clarify.
What did I just say? Actually, you know what? I'll let it slide because a split second of the brick flying in is funny.
And then I open the door and see, actually, I'm here to fight. Who the fuck is this guy?
Much like how the writing for AVGN's verses were in line with his style of humor, with more direct bluntness in his insults and excessive amount of cursing, this is present in Scott's parts in the battle as well, with much drier, snappier humor and more sarcastic jabs, and the writing does a good job at showing that contrast between the two styles of humor. Timing and pacing is everything when it comes to writing funny lines, and this part definitely understands the assignment.
Oh right, AVGN, I love game reviewers. They all bitched for and screamed all their way to obscurity.
I do like how this verse's editing is accurate to how the actual Scott's videos are edited. Even the background is near identical to the real thing. I know I already went on about how this battle is great with its visual details and accuracy, but I wanted to point that out anyways. That being said, why is Failboat in that lineup? Yeah, he's a gaming YouTuber, but he's more of a Let's Player than an actual game reviewer. The others fit fine, I get why they're there, it's just Failboat that feels out of place.
He started in 03.
He started in 04.
After all this time, I think rather it's not really Cinemassacre and more Cinemassacre.
I have nothing to critique on this line, it's just, yeah, ain't that pretty much the truth. AVGN, and by extension Cinemassacre, really does feel like more of a shell of its former self than what it used to be.
Fuck the movie Shrek, it's overrated. I don't know why the Library of Congress has to have that one. What the fuck?
Playtime is over.
Oh dear. Oh!
This came out 3 years ago.
Out of all the wacky antagonists that you dare to attack, how'd you fumble with Polybius? Just hit it with a bat.
I like this line, highlighting their differences and how they both dealt with Polybius in their respective shows. James delved into the psychological horror surrounding the game and slowly got consumed by the madness emanating from the machine itself. Scott just fucking yeeted a bat at it. The absolute dismissive way Scott says this line is hilarious, and fits with Scott's overall personality and style of humor. It's a funny line coupled with a good performance. As for the cameos here, they are relevant to be here, with them all being antagonists from past AVGN videos, and they all look pretty high quality, with, by the way, 3 of these being stock footage from Gridline rap battles. Not sure what Joker is lip-syncing to, though, and the way Bugs Bunny is placed behind Freddy and Michael makes him look much larger than the two by comparison, which is kinda hilarious to think about, actually. Not the worst sizing issue I've seen in a battle, just kinda looks odd.
He's had control for a while, but once Screenwave had got that, got turned to one more middle-aged white guy with a podcast.
He did.
Now, I'll admit your main show's pretty alright, but your other series, well, your main show's pretty alright.
Now that's how you use repetition as an effective punchline. Again, the dry humor in this verse is completely in line with how the actual Scott the Wasp would say these disses. I can totally imagine the real Scott saying this. It's really accurate to his style while still being funny in its own right.
No beers at your funeral.
Yeah, stop maybe drinking.
Freshie Canal as Rex Moz is glorious casting.
God, that shit was so boring, your fans must hate joy. Being sedated by this fucking Game Boy.
Solid way to turn a quote reference into an actual diss. Just for context, this is parodying a scene from AVGN's Game Boy accessories video, where, as the title suggests, it was basically just him looking at the weird accessories that had been made for the Nintendo Game Boy. Near the end of said video, the nerd reacts to the existence of the Petty Sedate, an accessory that, no joke, sedates you while you play the Game Boy.
I want to be sedated with the Game Boy! I want to be sedated with the Game Boy!
It's definitely not uncommon for rap battles to have a known quote or a scene turn into a diss, but it's another thing to actually do it right. And as seen here, when it's done right, it's funny.
Ray couldn't top me and you can't beat me either.
Hey, if you can't beat him, join him.
I'll chop you into 4 white guys and call you Weezer.
Aside from just being a simple ERB reference, the visual gag here just makes me laugh on top of it. It's a fucking Weezer joke, what else do I say about it? It's just funny.
You decided not to see Ghostbusters 2016? I'm sure Sony was devastated not to have you in their seats.
That video was such a non-controversy that I'm surprised the outrage from it even happened at all. You'd think with how much film criticism has evolved online over time, people would have taken more of a lesson as just simply not seeing a movie that looks bad instead of hate watching it. Making the act of not going out of your way to spending your own money to watch a movie you know you're going to hate is comically easy, and James's video was just more or less highlighting that in a downright respectful way. Yet even in today's online film climate, you still see people acting like such an act is unheard of. I'm not saying you're going to like every film you see in theaters, nor am I saying you shouldn't apply critical thinking at all towards movies you dislike or hate. Goodness knows I'm familiar with that. But if you're going to willingly pay for and walk into seeing a movie you know you're going to hate from the start, then I'm just saying you have nobody to blame for your bad experience but yourself. Sorry, I went off for a bit there. The line's solid and is a good reference turned into an effective diss. Moving on.
So, speaking of movies, I suggest you stop your bitching, please. I've seen more convincing green screens from ERBO history.
Mostly.
Pushing my button, shithead, I ain't a fucking power glove. And here I'm thinking hearing you for just 1 fucking hour, so.
Again, I have to give props to Matthew and Zossam for this performance. Even when the lines aren't saying super direct disses towards the opponent, their performance as AVGN is more than convincing and entertaining enough to make up for it.
Red sucks your spider balls and that's some fucking fuck shit. Border you'll be closed and is your fucking coffin.
Simple yet really cool visual effect for the border in this part, and a good reference to one of Scott's songs revolving around the blue border. Sometimes an effect doesn't need to be super fancy or a reference to be too deep for the line to work. It sometimes just does.
This guy is a shitload of fuck, and I do not mean some, I mean a shitload of fuck. Scott the numb nuts, Scott the dumb cunt, Scott the nightmare on Elm Street, cause fucker you work getting dumb.
Now this is how you ramp up a battle in intensity. The suit-up montage of the Super NES accessories, just like how the nerd would do in the classic videos, the game logos on the TV reflecting the lyrics and being perfectly stylized to look like actual game logos, even the beat, which by the way was custom made by Fightmarker himself, now includes a guitar in it that sounds vaguely like the AVGN theme. There's clearly a ton of effort being put into this part to ramp up the battle while also having it be entirely in nerd fashion.
You ain't funny though, well hit it smash this fucking Joe, kicks to your back, then I punch your nose. Shit is trash and fucking blows, rather lick the ass of a buffalo. I've had him, man, now you fucking know. I don't like him.
Alright, this is really cool. Not only is the editing in this verse downright fantastic with how dynamic it is, not only does it keep the intensity that the first half of the verse build up, but it builds upon it and keeps through with it to the end up until the blunt finisher. It's just a really cool sequence in general and a good capper for AVGN. Now, you could make the argument that since the verse itself is mainly the nerd shouting how Scott sucks and he'll destroy him, that there aren't many actual disses in the lyrics, similar to how Wonka vs. Jigsaw gave Wonka's second verse a great presentation and a direct homage to one of his scenes without much actual substance in the lyrics. But the difference here on why this works and that doesn't is because, well, this verse is entirely in character for the nerd. This is pretty much how the nerd acts. Wonka's verse just felt like it was riding off of its presentation without taking advantage of the lyrics, which just felt like a disservice to the character of Wonka when he has so much to work with. But here, that's far from the case. One of the staple aspects of classic angry video game nerd videos are the over-the-top rage-filled rants he does, where he repeatedly insults whatever game he's reviewing outright in the best way I can describe them, fuck shit poopy-headed insults you could possibly imagine, often coupling it with him fighting and physically destroying said game in an equally over-the-top fashion. This is what this entire verse is paying tribute to, having James's last verse match exactly how the climax to an AVGN video would go, both lyrically and visually. And it's done in a spectacular fashion that not only actually does its job at feeling like an AVGN video, but also makes for a satisfying finisher as a whole for the nerd, especially when it ends with the blunt, I don't like him. This verse has the spirit of AVGN through and through, and it caps off what already felt like a massive tribute to the show and character of AVGN as a whole. Now let's see Scott not give a shit.
In your own time you didn't even make the top. How shitty does it feel to be under Slosh and Shane Dawson?
Ooh, that's got a sting. And apparently it's something that was actually true. I like the details done here with the editing, using the footage from another Fightmarker battle, Ray William Johnson vs. Ryan Higa, to recreate the profile pics for these YouTubers, and they're all done pretty faithfully. Except for Anthony. Rabbi is not Anthony.
You used to scream fuck. Now everything you do is lame.
Someone in the comments of the original battle already pointed this out, but it's still a neat detail how the battle is mostly censoring Scott's cursing but not AVGN's, which is completely in line with both their styles of humor. Again, nicely done with implementing the contrast between the two.
Take the place of Chibi Robe. I know you like your toilet humor, James.
I don't really have anything to criticize in this part. This is just a nice way to use a callback to one of Scott's gags.
You lost your red, so don't claim that you got something.
You know what? This reminds me. Maybe I've been giving modern AVGN a hard time. Let's check out how his latest video is doing.
Where are you?
You'll be the ultimate master at everything. Now you don't have to be angry all the time.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
How you gonna listen to some tunes that can't even beat Bugs Bunny?
Alright, I get the references, and I like the tunes pun in the line, but honestly, this is kind of a clunky way to reference two AVGN moments at once in the same line. It doesn't really make sense as a line on its own when you think about it. Outside of the reference, what does it exactly mean when he says, "How are you gonna listen to some tunes?" You were doing so good with the callbacks up until this point. Don't fumble now.
Because making pop culture references is how you got famous.
Shit, is that gas?
Sure, if he was stuck in his mother's basement.
And to cap it all off, it utilizes one of the biggest running gags from Scott's entire series and turns it right around to dissing James one final time in a simple yet punchy and effective way. A good finisher for a good battle. That is until the JonTron second verse. Let's go!
Ayo, it's JonTron. This'll be a swan song. Where the beat go, oh god, fuck.
JonTron wins. So that was JonTron, or AVGN, versus Scott the Woz by Fightmarker. And yeah, what else can I say? This battle was downright fantastic. Most of the complaints I had in this video were really minor things, like a few visual hiccups or a couple lines I thought needed reworking, but overall, I found myself thoroughly enjoying what this battle had to offer. It works off of its original premise from its SoundCloud iteration, and enhances it tenfold to where I can confidently say it's a way more enjoyable experience. The performances are mainly top-notch, the editing is great and does the job that it needed to and then some, the lyrics all around combine solid callbacks and references to both opponents, with hard-hitting yet easy-to-follow jabs and disses, the beat is catchy and serves to fit the tone of the battle perfectly, and most of all, this felt like a worthy battle and even kind of a fitting tribute to these YouTube icons. One of Fightmarker's biggest strengths as a rap battle maker and content creator is managing to make battles that are not only hilarious with its humor through both the lyrics and editing, but managing to deliver a high-quality, well-produced battle on top of it that hits all the right beats while rarely feeling like it goes too overboard. I hope to see more battles from him in the future, and to all those watching, I encourage you to go subscribe to him and give his battles a watch. He's seriously talented and has a bright future ahead of him, and I definitely say this battle is proof of that. I give JonTron vs. Scott the Woz a 9 out of 10. Thank you, and good night.
Prepare to get crushed by Channel Awesome. You're nothing but a demo reel, so proceed with caution. That guy with the glass here to get both of your asses. Shoot your pistols with my pistol, abomination of assness. Here's a top 11 of why you suck with aplomb. Number 1, you do seriously overdrop the F-bomb. You've dug your own grave and now I walk all over you. I'm the nostalgia critic, remember it so you don't have to.
For what? Who's next? Yonason! Epic battle! Battle! Paradise!
Consider the following. If you think you can win this, your hypothesis is wrong. I'll kick it in low and make some chemical reaction.
Hi, it's JonTron with Slap Chop. You're gonna love my nuts.